Good morning. This is the Great Basin Smoke Dispersion briefing for this February 24th. And looking at the latest precipitation over the past 7 days, on the left, you can see significant precipitation all along the west coast. Another batch, this bright green, across parts of central and eastern Nevada up into the Wasatch and into Idaho. Widespread areas of a ½ to 1.5 inches. Otherwise, most other areas fairly dry. On the right-hand side, you can see how that compares to normal, above normal across some of the mountains of central and eastern Nevada, near normal in the Wasatch, a little bit above normal up in the mountains of central Idaho, but elsewhere as you head further south and east, considerably drier than normal. A look at the current upper-level map and the satellite imagery superimposed shows that we have another ridge of high pressure building on in across the Great Basin. It's been our weather trend for the past few weeks now. Most of any cloud cover is circulating up and over that ridge, keeping us on the dry side. A look at dispersion this Wednesday afternoon. You can see that across Nevada it is at its worst, with areas in red and some of these areas in the purple shades. If you look at the key on the right-hand side, this indicates very poor overall dispersion both vertically and horizontally. If we break it down and look at those individual parts, we can see on the left-hand side the horizontal transport winds, fairly light across southern Nevada, a belt of stronger winds across central Nevada and across the Wasatch. Mixing heights in the vertical, though, for the most part across the Great Basin, quite poor, except in the far south and in the far north. Now, if we take a peek at tomorrow afternoon, Thursday, high pressure ridge builds in across the area, firmly in control. Dry air, noticed by these tannish colors through here. And on the overall dispersion or ventilation, you can see areas in red covering most of our region, the worst of it being up across parts of northern and central Nevada. Breaking that down into its individual parts, you can see on the left-hand side the horizontal transport winds, very light all across Nevada and most of Utah as well, except a little bit better across the higher terrain. You can see here in those yellows and light greens, 8 to 12 mile per hour transport winds. Also some better winds up across parts of central Idaho. On the right-hand side, mixing heights, very poor across much of the Great Basin, especially Nevada, marginally better across Utah and in parts of the elevated areas up in Idaho. Now, by Friday afternoon, that ridge of high pressure, instead of building over us, is going to be fairly progressive and start moving off to the east as a trough of low pressure pushes in across the Pacific Northwest. And you can see that on the overall ventilation, much better ventilation from California into Oregon, starts improving a little bit across parts of Nevada. If we look at the components as we break them down into transport winds, quite strong from northern California into parts of northwestern Nevada and even picking up here in the mountains. And you notice that vertical mixing height starting to pick up as well as the high pressure ridge weakens across our region. Taking a closer localized look at the Utah Clearing Index produced by the National Weather Service in Salt Lake City, you can see overall quite poor dispersion both today, a little bit better across the higher elevations tomorrow, and poor everywhere on Friday. But keep in mind, by Friday, the better mixing and transport flow will be just off to our west. So I think Friday will be our worst day, but should be improving significantly after that. If we look at the 3-day precipitation totals, dry across most of the Great Basin except for some moderate rain activity close to a ½ inch across parts of the higher terrain of Idaho. The heavier precipitation moving onshore across the Pacific Northwest during that time. Now, if we look further down the road, starting with Saturday afternoon, you can see over us a trough of low pressure will be pushing on through. There'll be another high pressure ridge building, but a lot of moisture through here. The atmosphere fairly unstable. And on the right-hand side, you can see across Utah all in the white. So that's some of our better overall mixing and ventilation. It starts to decrease again across parts of western Nevada, and that's because high pressure will be building in from the distant west. There'll be some fast changes coming on through. If we go towards the next day, which would be Sunday afternoon, actually right here, on Sunday afternoon you can see that high pressure ridge kind of centered right over the eastern portion of the Great Basin, but another trough of low pressure moving into northern California and Oregon. So even though dispersion on the right-hand side gets a bit worse in this area in red across Utah, it starts improving again off to our west across parts of Nevada. And then if we go to Monday, you can see that overall on the right-hand side, it improves everywhere. We're all in the white except for a few portions of the Wasatch. And that's because another fast-moving trough of low pressure pushes across the region. Taking one more look down towards Tuesday, as that low moves out, a high-pressure ridge amplifies once again. We'll start to see a gradual decrease in ventilation or dispersion across Nevada. Still fairly decent across parts of Utah, especially eastern areas, and we'll see how long this ridge of high pressure decides to stick around. Now, if you look at precipitation expected from Saturday morning through next Monday morning, you can see the most significant precipitation over a half-inch across the mountains of southern and central Idaho. Across most of the Great Basin, either nothing or just some fairly light amounts. So on good dispersion days, fuels should still be fairly receptive to ignition. It won't be too soggy, except for, of course, up in the higher terrain of Idaho and parts of far western Wyoming. We push it down a little bit further from next Monday morning to next Wednesday morning. Again, the bulk of the steadier precipitation, this dark green, stays over Idaho. Across the Wasatch and northern Nevada, just a scattering of a few hundredths of an inch, if that, and most areas to the central and southern portions of the Great Basin stay fairly dry. Taking a look further down the road, our 8 to 14-day outlook from March 2nd to March 8th, noticing again warmer than normal temperatures, a lack of any cold Arctic air outbreaks across the west, and precipitation very unlike what we expected. There's a blocking pattern set up across the country preventing Pacific storms from doing what they normally do during an El Nino, so we expect to stay drier than normal for much of early March. This concludes our smoke briefing. Have a great day. Our next briefing will be the following Monday morning, February 29th.